Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having us here. We're super excited to have been given this opportunity. My name is Mike O'Keefe, and I'm here today to represent Corlytics. At Corlytics, we're changing the way that firms think about their regulatory compliance obligations. We treat regulation as a risk, and we risk rate the entire regulatory landscape. At Corlytics, we have addressed the following problem statement. So we want to help firms to share recommendations and information about regulatory change across jurisdictions. Firms are swamped in regulatory information. The volume of handbooks and regulatory updates on a yearly basis continues to drive the cost of compliance up with large numbers of teams. But even with this increased spend, Corlytics data shows that firms are still being fined $22 billion this year alone. This is a huge number, and Corlytics wants to help to change this. We want to provide better outcomes for regulators, for firms, and ultimately for consumers, because the cost of compliance is always passed to the consumer. So how do we do this? Well, Corlytics operates in two ways that we think is different than any other capability on the market at this point. The first one is in terms of relevancy. So even if compliance teams can gather all of that data together, how do they know which information is relevant for them? Corlytics automatically collects all of this regulatory information using bots and automation technology directly from the regulators' websites. We then apply, using our natural language processing and text analytics techniques, a deep level of taxonomization and categorization of the data. And this means that we can make the appropriate information available to the appropriate teams at the appropriate time. The second thing that Corlytics does is we rate regulatory risk. So once we've categorized all of that data, we can then begin to extract some intelligence from the data and run some risk models so that we can begin to explain to firms what their true regulatory risk looks like. So let's take an example of how this works in real life. So Jun is the head of compliance for a large multinational financial services institution across Asia. He has a full team that reports to him, and his obligations are to make sure that the firm is compliant with all regulation and legislation across the jurisdictions in which he operates, and to make sure that his team also does the same. So how does he do this? Well, the first thing he needs to do is collect all of that data. So Corlytics collects all of that data and provides it via an online portal that's very easy to use. Secondly, Corlytics then applies this taxonomy so that we can actually route the data around the firm in the appropriate way. Jun can even compare updates that happen in Asia with updates that happen in other locations in the world. He can also then configure a specific feed of data that comes to him. So whether this be about a consultation paper, a specific regulatory update, and also across defined sets of regulators that are relevant to him as a compliance officer. Jun can also share information and collaborate with other users, can ask them to risk assess data, and can share this information across jurisdiction also. So this obviously makes the compliance teams much more effective in terms of actually acquiring the data. But at Corlytics, we want to do much more. We want to provide a digitized view of regulation and legislation. And we do this via a series of heat maps. So the intelligence that we extract from these heat maps point the specific sets of compliance officers to where the areas of greatest regulatory risk lies. And we do this across risk topics, and also we do this across service lines within the firm. We map the taxonomy directly to the firm's, map our taxonomy directly to the firm's taxonomy so that we can actually provide a firm-wide view of what that regulatory risk looks like. In Corlytics, we have use cases across compliance, legal, op risk, and audit. We want to provide data across all three lines of defense, a consistent set of data, and that's extremely important to us. We also have, I'd like to announce, I guess, that we are launching a Corlytics mobile app specifically for the FinTech Festival, and we're doing this to give away the regulatory content that we collate. We feel that this is truly disruptive in the market, and we feel that organizations can benefit from it. So please do go and download it if you're interested. At Corlytics, what we want to do is make sense of regulation. We want to provide firms with relevant, risk-rated regulatory intelligence. Our first customer was the Financial Conduct Authority. We're also dealing with large multinational firms across Europe who have operations in Asia, across Europe, and in Asia Pacific. And we've also signed a US regulator just last week. Thank you very much for your time. Please do come talk to us at the booth if you'd like to ask more questions. Have a great festival.